Hello, and welcome to this fifth episode of the Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness podcast. And today I'm going to be interviewing one of the members from our groups, Facebook groups. Been with us over many years. That's Nid. She's in New South Wales in Australia. So due to the time difference, up quite early on a Sunday morning. And it's a nice, beautiful, bright, sunny morning as well here. So without further ado, I'm just going to mention how you can contact us, of course, on Twitter at Post Concussion Syndrome. On the internet, find us at Facebook, Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness Worldwide. And you can find me on Facebook as well. And also, we've got the WordPress blog, which is updated as and when. That's Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness UK.wordpress.com. You can find us, or just go to WordPress and search for Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness. You'll find us that way. Right, so without further ado, this is the interview, and hope you enjoy. Okay, so hello, Nid. You're over there. You're over there in a much warmer place than I am at the moment.
Yes, I'm just in Australia, which is actually we had a cooler day today. It was probably like about 20 degrees.
Oh, that must be terrible for you.
Yeah, no, it was terrible. I couldn't go and lie on the beach.
Oh dear. Well, yeah, it's we're having one of our coldest Octobers that I can remember here anyway. So, right. So, what we wanted to do today, the purpose of kind of talking to you is just to go through, obviously, your own life and experiences with post-concussion syndrome. And can you start to tell us a little bit, Nid, about how your injury occurred?
So it was New Year's Eve of 2012 to 2013. I was out with some friends in a pop-up nightclub in East London when I'd had quite a lot of martinis, and I don't recall what happened, but my friend saw me fall down a steel staircase and I landed on my face, about 6-7 foot drop, and I'd ripped open my left side of my front face, and they took me to hospital. I was conscious throughout, a bit dazed and confused. Yep. I presented at the hospital actually quite together. I knew to take my contact lenses out. I was feeling quite funny. Could sit through A&E for 5 hours waiting to see doctors. They stitched up my face and were principally concerned with whether or not I'd broken my cheek and my eye socket and things. And I was sent back for maxillofacial treatment and lots and lots of attention to permanent facial scarring, which I'm very fortunate didn't scar actually, but there was just a cursory mention at the hospital in my follow-up treatments about concussion and that I might feel a bit funny for a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah.
And obviously, as happens with concussion, I went back to work after 10 days. My boss kind of kept saying, "Oh, something's not right. Something's not right." She kept telling me to go back to the doctors, and the doctor just kept saying, "Oh well, maybe it'll just be a couple more weeks, maybe a few months." And it took about 3 months before it kind of first became noted that there was probably something quite significant wrong.
I see. Yeah, the 3 months mark seems to be a common kind of area where you're getting beyond a kind of rational sense that you're thinking this can't go on forever. But then you get to that point and it's like, well, hang on a minute, what if this does go on forever? So how did you cope then?
So, I mean, to be honest, I'd actually already left my husband and I was living on my own in London, and I was working in a very fun lawyer job. And it was my boss who was noticing that there were real problems. I couldn't walk straight, I'd walk into walls, I'd lose my temper, I'd burst into tears, I couldn't write sentences. I was forgetting things all the time, I was just a real mess. And so she kept asking me to go back to the doctors, and the doctors just didn't really do anything. I mean, the GP she just kept saying, oh, there's really long waiting lists to see a neurologist, so there's no point to be on the waiting list because you'll be better by the time you see them. And I kept saying, but what if I'm not better? What if I'm not better? I still have to wait. Please put me on the waiting list. So after 3 months, that 3 month mark, my boss made me take 2 weeks off and go and spend 2 weeks with my mum. And my mum realised that there was something really wrong, so she asked me to see a friend of hers who was a neurologist, and he kind of said, yeah, it looks like you've got post-concussion, who knows how long this could last. And from there, I sent myself off to find Headway, the head injury charity in the UK. And I went along to some of their sessions and met people who started making various recommendations about different types of specialists that they'd seen and different types of treatment and different things to ask my GP for help. And I used my own savings to start paying to find private consultants. So I really struggled with getting any help from the NHS. They were very unwilling to give me the referrals. And that was very frustrating. It was really frustrating. I also found something called brainwave therapy at the time, which is a form of neuro retraining, which I paid a lot of money to go and do privately for 5 days, about 5 months into my injury, and that gave me perspective of how sick I really was. And I decided that I needed to stop working at that point. So I left my career as a lawyer and got some neuropsychometric testing done again privately, which showed how much my IQ had dropped and how much I needed to do to improve my health. And I got rid of my flat and I went and lived with my best friend who was a GP, and she kind of helped me with tactics to help approaching the GPs to get referrals and try and get a bit better support through the NHS. And I did write quite a few letters of complaints to the NHS as well,
Really?
about how disjointed the system was, how I'd had such great treatment for my facial scarring, that there'd been no referrals for my head, and that no one had really identified it, and that, you know, when I did refer, they weren't talking to the same doctors, and they were in different hospitals, and, you know, I was waiting so long that, you know, yes, there was recovery, but how much detriment was happening to me in the process of not knowing what was happening. As I said, Headway were amazing. They were such a great resource. They gave quite a few private consultations and things which were really supportive and really helped me. And I just put myself, to be honest, on my own regime pretty much from the beginning. I kept an Excel sheet. I monitored my symptoms every day. I wrote down from a 0 to 10 rating, you know, how much sleep I had, how bad my migraines were, how much pain I was in, how distressed I was, how many hours I'd cried. You know, like the full remit of you know, how little you can do, how much I'd physically been able to walk, say, because I was so exhausted with the neurofatigue. And after a year of monitoring myself, I could see that there was a degree of slow improvement. And so I moved back to London to start to integrate myself, and I lived with my sister. And again, I paid for more private consultation with a neuro-occupational therapist. He gave me projects to do in terms of helping me structure my day and return to the ability to work. And that was really helpful, but obviously all the doctor's advice about returning to work is slow reintegration back into the system. The doctors would say, well, you're well enough to work, say, 2 hours a day, maybe. But they were saying I was well enough to work, but it wasn't actually that I could function as a lawyer. So I had this issue where lawyers were saying, well, A, you have to be able to work at least, you know, a 14-hour day. And 2 hours isn't realistic. So we don't want to give you work. But they were also saying you're also a liability because we can see that you aren't functioning as a lawyer. You're functioning below normal. And I had more neuropsychometric testing and I was still functioning below average, so I wasn't at the IQ level I needed for my career. So I then noticed, you know, the other issue with the health system is that people are signing you off to work, but you're not functioning necessarily at the performance required for certain roles. And so there's an issue there with the health system saying that you can contribute to society, but not necessarily in the roles that maybe you've once done. So I found that very challenging to work through in how I could feel like I was coming back into the world. I think after about 15 months, you know, it was quite depressing, feeling like you can't do anything useful and have a job, and being on benefits, and all of those associations, with being a sick person.
Yeah, and then did things then start to come to a head at work, or was the kind of like a build up of
I completely lost
resentment
my job,
against
so
you?
I had no job to go back to.
So it kind of built up and exploded.
So I changed career. I'd taught dance before I was a lawyer, so I went back and retrained as a Pilates teacher, and did some other trainings and started teaching as a self-employed person, building up my own hours. And I did a bit of business consulting for a friend of mine who was starting his business, and he gave me flexi hours. And so I could kind of, on the days when I felt okay, I could do bits, I could go and teach and then go and sleep for like a day.
You could fit it together.
I slowly, built stuff up, got sick, took time off, and it was good, it was flexible. It was very challenging not having a routine, which obviously all the doctors tell you to do. But then I didn't really have a choice. My view was, well, this gives me an ability to work. It means I'm learning, I'm putting myself in environments where I've got structure. But, yes, I don't have a 9-to-5 job, but I can't get a 9-to-5 job. I couldn't find anything. I tried so many times. I spoke to so many law firms. I went through so much testing. There just wasn't a job that I could do. And I did a couple of stints of a couple of weeks of temp work, doing like paralegal work, and I was too sick from it. It would make me so ill again.
I understand.
Such bad process, So it was frustrating. It was frustrating, but you learn, I think, through those processes to have quite a lot of compassion for yourself and to just
of course, that's vital. That's absolutely vital. And you mentioned as well that your sister was there to help you through some of it, or you stayed with your sister. Who else was there at that time, and how were they able to kind of empathise and guide you, or how did that go?
Instantly, my best friend, she was the first person that came and stayed with me after my accident. She came up in Wales, and I went and lived with her when I left my flat in London. She was amazing, absolute godsend. She was just so patient and tolerant, and I went back and stayed with her this summer, and she was saying she remembered coming home from work and just finding me sitting on the floor in sobs of tears, unable to line 3 jars up in a row because I just couldn't make sense of what was in front of me. That desperate place, and she was so patient with me, and she'd be so kind and just take me for walks and things. So she was always amazing. My sister also was very patient and very tolerant with me when I went to London, and I really struggled with reintegrating back into the city. And she and I'd always had difficult relationships. Actually, it was really wonderful. It really helped bring us together and have a much better understanding and much more compassion for one another, which was really lovely turnaround. And my parents were really great as well, in their own ways. They did their best to support me. Neither of them lived in the UK, so it was hard for them to be able to do much more than kind of send me money. My mum pretty much would make me have a regular daily phone call to check in on me, which I found really
That's
hard,
mums for you.
Actually,
No, that's mums for you.
And there'd be days where I just wanted to turn my phone off, and then she'd obviously panic.
She'd find you. That's what mums do.
Yeah, exactly.
Super sleuths.
And then when I was in London, the girls that, my friend that saw me have my head injury, so my friend who was standing at the top of the stairs when I fell down was amazing. She would come and just amuse me when I was really low in London. She'd just come after work and make up games and things and just sit with me, and she was fabulous. And
that's great,
they were really understanding. I think the degree of personality change and the degree of how much I was struggling from what I was like before, people were very understanding.
That's excellent.
I was very blessed with how fabulous people were towards me. And I look back and I think at those outbursts of anger that I would throw at people.
Emotional ability, that comes up a lot. And so, you had mixed fortunes there, because you're saying that, a lot of what you said about the NHS resonated entirely with me. But it's like, they're saying, oh, well, by the time you get your referral through, you'll probably be okay again. And I went, if you can believe it, most people don't. I went 9 years and never got to see a neurologist once. I think 4 mild traumatic brain injuries in that period of time. And the main thing with me was nobody saw me have my accident. So unlike yourself, you're saying your friends saw you and obviously they could relate it. But I think it seems to be with the NHS that, it's like if a tree falls in a forest, and there's nobody there to hear it. I don't know what you think about that, but they just seem to be...
I think the NHS is great for acute issues.
Trauma,
what the NHS does well is it looks after people in immediate trauma, so that's why they were amazing.
And childbirth and so on,
Yeah, anything that requires instant attention. And I guess it's my view now on Western medicine overall. Western medicine is great to, bring you back to life. It's great to, deal with someone having a stroke. It's good to put your leg back on.
Yeah.
That's what the Western medical system is good at. And then the NHS is a true reflection of what the Western medical system does. What it doesn't do is things that require more social care, and a head injury is as much a social issue as it is a well-being and a health problem.
Yes.
Because you need the social support, you need your connections, and you need to be able to piece together all the aspects of your life that your brain, does for you. It all needs to come together to help your brain heal. You can't just have a bandage on it. That's not going to work. It's not just the brain retraining. It's the social cues that you need to relearn. It's empathy you need to relearn, and anger management. It's a bit of mindfulness. It's like how to move your body in a way that's not going to hurt you. It's how to eat well, and all of those things are all a part of it.
And medications can be like the sticky plaster, can't they? For many people.
And they were so keen to give me so many drugs. So and I really fought it actually. So I was very keen that the only way I would know if I was getting better was if I could get rid of the pain and if I could get rid of the symptoms.
Yeah,
so
that's quite common.
My view was to really push through. Although I would say you can't push through PCS. You have to allow it.
That's a fact.
And ride it.
Yeah, that's a fact. I think we're both agreed on a lot of things here, and that is the same. Where the allopathic medications come in, the painkillers, the tranquilizers, the antidepressants, sleeping tablets, it is, I would say, just very much a sticky plaster. But what we found, and I don't know if you've noticed in the Facebook groups as well, is some people are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even 10 years in, and they're still treating it with sticky plasters. And then they're wondering as well why the kind of everything's still in such a mess for them, when like the world's leading authorities on PCS, like Dr. Michael McCrea, the neurologist, say, well, 1 to 3 months tops, and that's it. What do you think about the situation there, like with how we see that every day on Facebook nearly?
I think it's difficult. If you've got recurring head injuries, then you've got a slightly different nuance to the problem. I've got a client of mine who's had several recurring head injuries. When she recently fell down a well, she needed to start taking tablets again to help, because it changed again a new, aspect of the head injuries for her. And so she kind of keeps on going on and off medication because of the way she keeps on re-injuring herself.
I see.
You've got to be careful, because some people you don't know if there's something else going on.
Of course.
So I don't want to judge anyone for taking the tablets in that respect, but I do think in the people that I've met and in the years that I've travelled the world now with this, and I've worked with quite a few different organisations. The people I see who really make the biggest healing are the people who really look at it as a healing journey through all aspects of who you are. It's, to me, PCS is like the wake-up call that you have not been living your best self, and you literally need to crack your head open.
That's true.
And realign yourself to what you're here to live, and it humbles you to not being whatever your ego was making you before your head injury. And if you're allowing bits of your ego to still drive, it's because you're clearly, you're still not kind of surrendering sometimes to it. And that's not to say that people aren't surrendering, but there's lots of levels at which you have to surrender. And a large part of that is that it's a really slow and quite painful and quite frustrating process. And for those of us who really struggle with acceptance, and I'm definitely one of those people, your health issues keep coming up because you're fighting, you're pushing through the acceptance.
Yeah, and that type
your
of
limitations.
Yeah, that type of it is very much, it can be for many people who see the opportunity, be a spiritual awakening. I mean, my life was just totally turned upside down within a matter of months, within a year. It was just like, taken upside down, everything was shaken out, and all that was left was like myself trying to recover. And yeah, that can be the same for many people. Going back to medications, I think it's important to draw a line between mild traumatic brain injury and post concussion syndrome, and then the very separate conditions of TBI and STBI. So that's me. And often in the groups we get all three types of people join. Many have been in car wrecks, have had repeated horrific kind of accidents and things, and they've been in hospital lots of times. And where I draw the line is between mild traumatic brain injury, as the experts do, and the other two categories. Now, we can't turn people away. We can't say, well, we've got to be inclusive of everybody. And I think if you have had the traumatic brain injury or severe traumatic brain injury, then yes, you will probably be on some types of medications for most of your life. But where the difference with mild traumatic brain injury is, well, actually, then, the experts are saying, well, it doesn't benefit anybody. So we have to be very, very careful. And it can be really tough to explain that to people.
And it's also, it's a sliding scale to an extent. It's not very easy to just chop off a line and say, you're in that category and you're not. I mean, I know that's what you have to do from a medical perspective.
Yeah, the Glasgow Coma Scale and so on.
I think the very first neurologist I saw, who was the family friend, he explained to me that the problem with brain injuries, regardless, mild traumatic, and to that point of it's a sliding scale where you only know how sick you are with hindsight of how well you've become. And at the time I was like, God, that's really depressing. He was like, but there's no way that we can really say how sick you are or how bad it's going to be or how long it's going to be until you get better. And, that doesn't make it kind of very consoling when you're the person who's there. No. But it also does show the difficulty that the doctors are faced with in really knowing how sick someone is as to whether you should be on the meds or not.
Yeah, and I think that that we both had experiences with the NHS, and we know that the only diagnostic technology they have is a CAT scan or an MRI scan, both of which they only really do to rule out anything more serious. So you're looking above and beyond mild traumatic brain injury. So they're trying to look for things beyond that, and when they don't find anything, most people are usually very discouraged, and I went through both. I think the first time I had a CT scan, I'd woken up after a week at work. I'd woken up on a Saturday morning and half my body was paralysed. I was just numb. I managed to get myself in a taxi, go to hospital, had the CT scan. They left me sat in the corridor for 2 hours, and I eventually was asking people, what do I do? What's going on? Do I get a result? And the guy just said to me, you've got some brain swelling. Take your medications and go home. And then the MRI scan, similar. The MRI scan was like, well, you've got some brain swelling. Can't really. There's nothing more serious than that. But if you look at diffusion tensor imaging and different things, which are available in the United States, a standard to a lot of neurologists who will have the correct diagnostic technology. So when we look at the UK, we're thinking, well, like I say, it's like trying to read an ordnance survey map with a telescope. You're kind of looking for one thing, but not for another. And I think that's where we're seriously behind other places, other countries. So it's worrying.
That was why for me I kind of gave up on the NHS and I just put myself on my own, approach, and I talked to as many people and found specialists where I could. And some specialists wouldn't see me because I didn't have an NHS referral, even though I was trying to pay privately.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which was really frustrating. So I mean, the UK. The problem with the UK is because of the NHS. In a way, it makes it much harder to navigate.
Well,
and they're only
mostly private now.
Big problem. But the private system in the UK is not really there unless you're with Bupa or something. And even then, it's still quite hard to find people. And get a good network because they just still don't talk to each other. You're not in any kind of specialist clinic.
No, well, they're in business, and obviously then it becomes a proprietary thing for them to have their own techniques and things protected. I think there are some clinics. I remember when I was living in Manchester, there were one or two which were just round the corner, and I remember seeing these one day and thinking, oh yeah, this institute deals with Post Concussion Syndrome and sports injuries and things. I was like, I'd never heard of it before. But of course they're private and they're going to cost a lot of money. Whereas with your good old NHS, you've already paid for that down the years through your taxes and whatnot. But I was interested to hear what you said, that you paid for much of your own treatment and your diagnostic treatment yourself.
Yeah.
And
well, I think
that was good that you could do that.
I didn't want to wait.
No, but
I didn't want to wait, and I was like, actually, and I guess this is one of the things that really shifted for me was that investing in my health. Like that was the thing that changed. I was like, do you know what? I don't have any money. I was £70 a week on benefits, but I was still willing to put whatever money I had, savings, into getting my health sorted.
Yeah, I mean that's the way to do it. I mean, myself, I didn't have any savings. I think when I had to, I was forced to sell my house, and then I had literally nothing left. But I then went through, kind of a few years. I had another injury, and things weren't so good. When I came out the other side, Nid, I looked to go natural, as you did, and kind of go on a holistic path. And then what I did was I joined some groups. And I think by that time I'd got a greedy me, so I had fibromyalgia as well, and costochondritis and stuff. So I'd been going to a fibromyalgia group, all these lovely ladies that kind of met once a week, and I think there was only one other gent there, lovely chap, I think his name was Adam. And one day, there's a lady came to do a talk, and it was a lady I know well, Dr. Alison Merrick. Is a wonderful Bowen technique therapist. She does MLD and all kinds of stuff for people with chronic pain. And she did this talk and said, oh, well, I might be looking for some case studies. So I got in touch with her, knowing that I couldn't afford very much, because you're looking at maybe £40-45 a treatment once a fortnight. And I was like you on benefits and thinking, oh. But I had a chat with her, and she said, well, I don't get many men, and it's definitely not many men with fibromyalgia. So if I do this for you at kind of just less than half price or whatever, will you be my case study? And within a year, she just totally I was off all medications. I was away from the NHS. Not that the NHS had ever helped me. I'd never been in hospital, despite having kind of 3 or 4 concussions in that time. I never had a single referral. I'd never been treated, never been allowed to see a neurologist. And really, I look back on it now and think, I'm lucky to be alive. One, I'm lucky I didn't kind of succumb to just kind of total despair or kind of destroy myself like I'd seen other people destroy themselves. But also, I was just lucky and grateful to have found a different way. So, you do find your way back to healing, don't you? What do you think?
I think you do. I mean, I think, I think back to, especially because I was 2 years, I was going to the same maxillofacial clinic for my scarring, and the psychologist there would ask me, about, was I traumatised from falling down the stairs? And I'd sit in these meetings and I'd be like, no, I've got a head injury. My life has been turned upside down. I was like, can I not talk to you about my head injury and how this system is completely messed up? And she'd be like, oh, the problem is you present really well, but I'm on a limited scope of, this study that I've been funded for. And she'd say, but I'd really like you to write letters and tell the NHS about what's wrong with it. And I was like, it's not going to, I can see that there's a problem with the system, but what really changed it for me was that I was told by one of the doctors, just do some meditation. It's the only thing that's going to help you. And literally, I would just spend hours a day meditating, and I would listen to meditations, and because there was nothing else I could do. I was in so much pain. The only thing that didn't hurt was to literally sit there and say to myself, shh, 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 for hours.
That's really good advice.
That was it. And that's what I used to do for hours on end. I'd stare out of my window if I could open my eyes, and I would make that sound, and I'd go between crying or not. And then eventually I learned a white light healing meditation that I would do, and that really helped to kind of ease some of the pain and just calm me down. And you know, over time I learned, you know, through the teaching and the networks that I was building, some different tools around kind of, you know, Reiki healing, which I'd had before, but I'd never been, you know, overly into. And I was working a lot with yoga teachers when I was teaching in the studios in London. And so I was building a healing network, and people would offer me healing because they'd see that I was in pain. So I started getting lots of, you know, very loving, generous people offering me
that's wonderful.
that kind of help. And also, you know, I began, one of the tasks that my occupational therapist was to do a blog, and I did a blog on food because I realised that my brain couldn't follow a recipe. So I went to make a chocolate cake for my friend's birthday, and I forgot to put the chocolate in. So I recognised that recipes were a really good marker for how well my brain was functioning, was how complex a recipe I could follow. And so I started blogging about recipes that were, you know, easy for when your brain's really not working, and then slowly getting a bit more complicated depending on if you were feeling a bit better with function. But I also learned about foods that were good for brain health, as well as for facial scarring. So I was trying to get a diet of food that would be really high in vitamin E for my face, but also really high in like omega-3s, for really trying to help with healing my brain and looking at anti-inflammatory diets so that I could reduce the swelling in my brain. And, you know, that stuff, and then meeting nutritionists who taught me even more, all of that was, you know, really started helping me make that shift. And then after 4 years, like I lose track of the years, 4 years of being in the UK, you know, I'd recovered, I was managing to work a full-time job, I'd set up my own company, I had teachers that were running, and I worked, I actually left the full-time job, did consulting and ran my company. And I just realised I was really unhappy in the UK and I'd had enough. And so, you know, with very little money, again, set aside, but I knew I was finally well enough that I could travel. And I think that was the main thing for me, was I knew that I was well enough to be on my own and that I could be independent, and that I wouldn't fall apart if I was in an airport or something. And I just didn't tell people. I just left the UK on a 3-week holiday and changed my flight once I'd left the country and didn't go back.
Wow, that's one
and
way
that
to
was
make
it.
an
And
exit.
I had no idea what I was doing. I just
you know,
knew I needed to leave. And I went and literally, like a miracle, I got offered some work on a healing detox retreat, and I literally lived on detoxes for over 3 months, and that nutrition change really helped me reset my well-being, and that made me see the power of how we eat in terms of our brain health recovery.
Food is such a massive part of that, and you know, not just eating a rainbow, all different colours, but nutrition itself, and then supplemental nutrition as well. And I think a lot of what you're talking about as well is I have a deep interest in functional medicine, things that actually get to the root cause of illness and problems. So if you think about a mild traumatic brain injury, what is it that these doctors, you know, can't see that confuses them so much? Well, you think like these little cells, axonal cells in the brain, the nerve cells aren't actually dead; they've just been distended or stretched. And so then the brain has to kind of work around that and say, well, how do I kind of gradually repair this? If you're just kind of like eating, you know, kind of pre-packaged food, or, you know, junk food, or like a, you know, an unnutritious diet, and then you're putting all these medications and things in your body, then not only is your immune system going to go right down, but your brain repairing itself is going to take so much longer. And then
one of the things that I was told, sorry to interrupt, was so your brain, you know, your brain takes up about 25 to 30% of your calorie intake, right? And when it's healing, it needs even more. So, you know, I noticed my appetite hugely increased. Now, for some people, they also lose their ability to have any awareness of how full their stomach is with their head injury, or even awareness of how hungry they are. But you know, you've got to remember, a healing brain is going to be looking for even more calories than normal. So you're going to be looking to really fill it up. So that's where people get that neuro fatigue, but also they're looking to have all those sugary things to give them that energy to function and be in a conversation. So you really need to look at diet in terms of feeding that brain so that it can heal, but also function with the optimum nutrients that it can. And Dr. Mark Hyman's done some really good stuff from functional medical perspective around brain injuries and brain health. And the Broken Brain podcast that his partner Nid Ra does is really fabulous in terms of learning more about just brain health in general, but actually they did a TV series about how people's brains are broken, and he did do an episode on head injuries, looking at kind of what would be the optimum, not just nutrition, but also other things that you can do in terms of the early stages of brain health recovery from a head injury. So that I found, and I only found that much later on in my recovery, kind of 2017. It all came out, and that's really good resource for people because they look at it from a very holistic and functional perspective. And so you don't need to be a dippy healer like all the energy stuff that I do that not everyone wants to do. I do think you have to do meditation. I don't think you can get away with not doing it. I know that it's hard, and I know that people can be quite resistant to it, but that was what one neurologist said to me was do the meditation, and he's so right, you have to, because your brain needs downtime to rewire itself, and meditation is a rewiring. It's rebuilding the networks. It's not just sleep, but you need to do it when you're awake.
Yeah, that's it. And going back to meditation, I learned when I was 8 years old. My parents, they weren't quite hippies, but they took us, me and my brothers, to learn transcendental meditation. I was 8 years old, and it was like, and that stayed with me through my teen years. And then I was meditating. I'd be like commuting to work, which was an hour and a half each way at least. I'd be sat in the top deck of the bus, kind of like meditating for half an hour, because that was the only time I had in the day.
That's awesome.
And so I've kept that up, and that was, for me too, a major saving grace. And I think it can seem like a really daunting thing for people that will say, oh, I've tried meditation, but it didn't work. And you think, maybe you just didn't quite get the right guidance or the right... And there are some really, really great tools available to us free now. I mean, you've got YouTube, and you can just kind of find frequencies and things there. But there's actually one that I would really recommend to people that's been around for many, many years. And the gentleman was Australian, and unfortunately he passed many years ago. A chap called Barry Long. And he did a tape course, which was then back on cassette tape. I think it's probably digital now. And I believe it's still free. And it's just called Start Meditating Now. And he guides you through kind of like how to get deep into meditation, just through visualization. And he explains it so well. And he's very matter of fact. So if anybody, when you're listening out there to this interview, just maybe consider that. If you have struggled, don't underestimate the power of a still mind.
I mean, and it's not even a still mind. I think, I do...
Still consciousness.
meditation or yoga nidra. And it was my head injury that propelled me into learning this, because I found it so powerful and transformative. And there's the Richard Miller I-Rest yoga nidras, which are wonderful for trauma. He designed them for military veterans. So they've had loads of studies done around how they help people who've had trauma in their lives. And it's a very sensitive style of yoga nidra. Yoga nidra is where you just lie down, you don't even have to fall asleep, and you're guided through a journey. And part of that process are breathing techniques and learning to sense into the body and sense into opposite sensations, and how I remember the moment when I realized that I was in complete control of my sensory experience. And that I was able to literally be like, I'm standing out in the cold and being like, I don't want to be cold, I want to be warm. And being able to then stop that kind of, rigid cold feeling and relax. And being like, I'm in control regardless of my physical surroundings. And, those kind of things are so powerful, especially when you feel so out of control with a head injury, to learn those kind of tools. So, I mean, I'd definitely say that that's an amazing practice, which is the I Rest with Richard Miller. I do them myself, and I do short meditations, and I do the yoga nidras as well for people. And they're really popular, and they're on iTunes and Spotify and all the usual places. And I think that I definitely noticed those are the kind of things that really change things. And in fact, oh my gosh, I've totally forgotten his name. I'll find it. I'll send you a link.
Back to you.
There was a sportsman in America who founded Love Your Brain.
Yeah.
And his is all yoga and meditation for brain healing.
Right.
Kevin Pierce, that's his name, Kevin Pierce. And he does a variety of different education, yoga, meditation. There's free resources as well, and that's a US organisation.
Yeah.
And his came from his brain injury. So I think there's quite a few people who have really discovered, experienced, and are trying to share the importance of this in terms of healing from a brain injury and how it really I don't think you can't just say that the meditation and the yoga nidra practices are the healing tool. What they do is they help you get this perspective.
Yeah, it's like that cake you were talking about. It's like the cake you're talking about. You can't forget the chocolate, and meditation might be the chocolate in the cake, but you need the flour, the sugar, the icing, everything else. And that's the same for a healing journey. You need a number of things kind of practiced and repeated in combination, I think.
Definitely. And, those all become a part of the routine that the doctors tell you have to have. The doctors say you must build a routine, and those are the tools that you want to put into your routine. They are the meditation, they are how you eat, they are connecting with people, and really appreciating those people who stood by you, and even the new people who come into your life and offer you support.
Yeah, the new ones.
Accepting you as you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really important part of it, and I think like you've got to beware, because I went through quite a period of isolation with people that I thought were friends and so on, and I was on my own. I didn't have the kind of support from family, because they were just like, oh, well, you're probably faking it, and a lot of friends were kind of there trying to test me. And trying to test me to see if I'd break, this pretense that I thought I was putting on. So I was up against it, and that kind of made the emotional ability worse. So sometimes I'd just kind of like collapse and be like, what the hell? But yeah, making new social pathways, I had to retrain myself. I was just totally became fairly social inept at times, and it could be like, well, I had to find more positive people to be around. And I think that is the real key. You don't want people around you.
Positive people. Yeah, sometimes that does mean getting rid of your old friends and family, especially if they're not supporting you. I mean, even if they are supporting you, but they're negative.
Oh yeah, there's a few that survive. A few survived. The good ones. Right, so we've got a few minutes left, Nid. Can you tell us about what you're up to now, and what does the future hold for you as well, please?
So I would say this was the first year that I, on the anniversary of my accident, I looked back and I didn't go, oh my God, what a huge health improvement. So I finally felt like I've stabilised, which was very exciting.
Right, that's good.
And at that same time, I decided to move to Australia. So I've just settled into Australia. And it's like rebuilding my life again. A bit like the UK. So, still teaching yoga and Pilates and meditation out here now. It's a very different industry, which is very interesting. But also people have been seeking my my business and kind of legal knowledge. So I'm starting to do a bit more pseudo business consulting, with the legal influence. Mostly other mindfulness companies, healers, and wellbeing professionals, looking at how they can value, the wonderful things that they're creating. And for me, that's really important, is to support that community. But also, I do miss the lawyer in me, and I do now have that ability to have that function. I don't have the stamina for the stress of that career still, and I don't think I'd want to go back to what I was beforehand. So, the future is balancing those two parts of my world and trying to bring them together in a slightly more full offering to people. But I'll still be doing all of my online stuff and hopefully get back to retreats once my visa's resolved in Australia.
Yeah.
So lots of very boring logistical things, but also wonderful and exciting opportunities and changes are happening, which is really exciting. It's nice to feel that my health is really stable enough to feel like I can move forward with my life in a way that I think I still do have moments where I question if I'm fearing moving forwards because I worry about my health and the limitations. But I don't believe that there's really anything holding me back now other than what's in my mind. I think I'm now just aware of my well-being. I'm now aware of my stress levels. I'm not pushing through things that I was doing before.
No.
And maybe now I'm just I'm accepting and living within who I am, which maybe I wasn't doing before that. And enjoying myself is the key part of my focus for life, is to be surrounded by lots of wonderful, loving, positive people, which I am very fortunate to be surrounded by.
That's good. That's good to hear. Well, thank you for taking this time to join me, and I feel like obviously we could have a whole lot more to talk about another time if you wanted to do this again, because we seem similarly minded on a lot of things, and we've only kind of touched the surface of the healing side of things, which is is my kind of main area of geekishness as well. So maybe we could follow this up another time if that's good with you.
Yeah, that would be lovely. I'd love to explore in depth a bit more some of the other aspects of healing, especially where you get the science moving and into that esoteric world of healing and how they're merging together. Because I do think that head injury is so those two worlds together.
Well, if you look at the study science on brains and the brain, or the brains, as we have 4 of them. Men obviously have 5, as I always say, but everybody else has 4. The brain can operate in up to 11, that we know of, at least 11 different dimensions at once. And if I think about people like Amit Goswami, where he's written about the brain and consciousness, and when I think about healing, and when I kind of teach Reiki, I do angelic Reiki and sound healing, you can feel shifts to places where you're like, oh, hang on a minute, this isn't familiar everyday stuff. There's energies coming in to heal people, and this is where a new paradigm of science and healing is emerging. It is coming. I'm sorry to...
Science is catching up.
It is massively. And oddly enough, a majority of what they're catching up and realizing and saying, well, this is now a fact that, you have neurons in your heart and glials and pathways in your gut, and also neurons there that produce serotonin. People for decades, centuries, even, hundreds, thousands of years, ancient texts and hidden esoteric knowledge has been saying all of this, and like science is now, oh yes, well now it's proven. So they are kind of catching up with things, and that's really good. But we need to kind of sit on the edge of this new paradigm, I think, and look at it and think, well, how can we help ourselves until the traditional healthcare catches up?
Which, who knows how those models will also be unfolding, depending on what goes on with things like Brexit and various endless elections, especially in the UK. But
what's Brexit? Sorry.
That endless.
Is that new biscuit with chocolate on? Well, I think
those kind of things have such significant changes in just this how the healthcare system is going to be set up. I think we do have to be in a world where we are progressing the health service by doing something for ourselves. As well.
Indeed, and this is another reason why it's so important for those of us that have some background and knowledge and kind of grounding in healing and different ways to heal, that we put that forward to people, that it is something they can do themselves. You don't have to be reliant on doctors past a certain stage. In fact, as I'm living proof, and many others are, and yourself to a great extent, we've healed ourselves.
And it's also, realising that it's actually a very empowering journey. Having a head injury can be so empowering in terms of taking control of your health and not needing that system.
Yeah, it's massive.
Because it can be within your hands, and it's your choice as to how you want to heal and how you want to recover and what use you want to make of it.
Absolutely. Right, that's fantastic. On that note, that positive note, we're going to leave it there. So once again, Nid, thank you very much. I'll let you get back to your evening. We've gone up a degree of warmth here. We're now 6 degrees Celsius, so that I'm happy now.
Have a lovely warm Sunday. Enjoy your day.
I'll do my best. All right. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
So there you go, and thanks again to Nid for joining me. I'm sure we'll look forward to speaking to her again sometime in the near future. Just a little bit more about Nid as well, Nid Ra. And as you heard her talk about her background and previous jobs in the legal profession, she does have a background in teaching dance and fitness. She's worked with children with special needs and had, her own personal struggles as well in her lifetime. First class honours in legal masters, which she got in Washington DC, and worked as a barrister in England as well before difficulties with head injury, post concussion syndrome came to the fore. Just worked in a range of roles in-house, leading media for music companies such as BMI New York and with MySpace, News International, Press Association, and specialises in music technology as well. So I think, if you want to have a look at Nid's website, it is nidsnidra.com, which is nidsnidra.com. And you'll find much more information, and you can subscribe to her newsletters and so on. I'm sure if you want to get in touch, she'll be really glad to hear from you as well. So thank you again, Nid. Finally, before we leave you, I've just got a few more messages. I'm just going to kind of go through one or two. There's a gentleman from Canada who's been in touch, a gentleman who I'll call Brian. He's also come off the back of losing his job. Unfortunately, I believe his medical insurance had run out, and he says that, he'd had to, been forced to kind of sell up and move on, and he's currently exploring, kind of just natural ways to heal, and researching and doing it himself. And he says, thanks for the podcast so far. I've enjoyed them, and can we please have more information on natural healing and the different types and how to use them together in combination. That's something, Brian, I think is very, very important, is not just relying on one or two things at a time and then going, this hasn't worked, this hasn't cured me. There's no silver bullet for PCS. It's probably you need a whole arsenal of, if that's probably the wrong word, but you need a whole range of tools used in combination simultaneously, or like on a kind of carousel basis, in order to start to heal yourself. It is really about nourishing every aspect of yourself, not just your mind and your brain that's trying to heal itself, but your body, reducing inflammation, reducing anxiety and stress, and kind of retaining the belief that you can heal and get better, whilst also dealing with that grieving process. So keep up the good work, Brian, and thanks for getting in touch. Stay in touch, please, as well. Also, we may be having some more contributions in the near future. Hopefully we will, but plenty more. Keep them coming. Also interested in any gentlemen out there that want to tell a tale, that want to tell the stories of their experiences with PCS too. And I believe our own Gina Hubert might be contributing something to help us with the creative side of recovery. To do with arts and crafts and general creativity. So we're really looking forward to that as well. Gina's down there in New Zealand. So one more message that has come through, a lady called Lucy, and I think she's in the west part of the UK, so Ireland, I think the west coast of Ireland as well. She's asking about the connections between healing by just using means of natural recovery, food, diet, and so on. She seems like this lady's been through quite a lot of different drugs from the health service, and she's had some issues. She's saying she's happy to discuss it, but she's saying she's had some issues with self-harm because of being left on various prescription drugs, painkillers and tranquilizers and things, and she's been through what sounds like a really rough time, and she says all the time that, I think she said 4 years or so, where she's just been literally taking one kind of prescription drug after another, and she said things have just got worse. Family and friends have kind of like shunned me, in certain areas, and not had many people to turn to, and she's saying finding her groups has been really, really helpful, really important to her, to her own recovery or getting her started. And she's also mentioned a very, very kind of lucid remark, was that, well, yeah, she feels like she's been asleep up until this point, always just kind of managing to get through day to day. So I'm really, really pleased to hear that, Lucy. Again, stay in touch. And a few of the messages, but we'll get to those in future episodes. So thank you again for listening, and obviously I'll speak to you again soon. And don't forget, you can find us on Twitter at Post Concussion, Facebook Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness Worldwide, and WordPress is Post Concussion Syndrome Awareness UK.wordpress.com. So thanks again, and goodbye for now.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.